Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is 11 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Legislative Advocacy Committee of the District Board. And looks like all members of the committee are present. So I don't think we need to do the roll call. Let's open it up to public comment now.
Okay, Chair Paul, there are no members of the public.
Thank you. Okay, action items. The first is adoption of the committee meeting the minutes of our last meeting on March 29th. Are there any corrections or questions about the minutes?
Not from me, so I'll move approval.
Second.
Yeah, there was just one thing I didn't understand. If we could go to on the second page of the minutes. The second paragraph beginning with Dave Stolt. Oh, I see, stated that Monterey One Water with the assistance of the district. Oh, I see. No, okay. I just had trouble reading it. Never mind. I second the motion and let's have a roll call vote.
Yes, Committee Member Malik,
Yes.
Committee Member Edwards,
Yes,
Chair Paul,
Yes,
the motion passes on a vote of 3-0.
very good. Okay, let's move on to number 2, the federal, our federal advocacy legislative consultant.
Yeah, so in our last chair, vice chair meeting, vice chair and Karen as the chair, both agreed that maybe it was time to talk about the relationships that we currently have. At a budget meeting, Director Edwards also said maybe we need to rethink whether we are benefiting from our state and federal lobbying efforts. So I've prepared here a memo just kind of describing the things that we do with our federal lobbyists. Director Adams said, well, maybe it's time to go back out and do an RFQ. I would not want to do that personally because both a time drainer, and I think that if we're going to have a federal lobbyist, we have a very good one. The relationship's very good. They've agreed to drop their monthly retainer by $2,000 a month to $6,000 from $8,000. We do have pretty regular contact. Just this morning, Mike McCullough of Monterey One Water and I were on a call with the Ferguson group, talking about the WRDA bill that we'll talk about under item 4, and prioritizing some projects. And then I also learned that NOAA, through the National Marine Fisheries Service, just 2 days ago, released a solicitation due August 15th for some fish passage barrier removal, which is something then that we can get into. So they do look out for our interests. It's been a productive relationship. The way we ended up getting the Title 16 monies, the 19.6 million for Monterey One Water, was both a byproduct of going around Washington to both legislators and the Department of Interior, the Office of Management and Budget, kind of describing the project, but then learning which folks were going to be the gatekeepers on the money and presenting to them. And then we went through a period where we weren't awarded in 1 year, and we felt that the criteria for the award was stilted against projects like ours. And so we went around kind of talking about the criteria, and we got some changes made. And then ultimately we got 3 appropriations that added up to the 19.6. And as I mentioned in the memo, this budget year, we're going to see directly a reimbursement from Monterey One Water of 1.5 million, which will help offset expenditures that we've done on deep injection well number 4, and then the remainder will go into the project to reduce the cost of water. So I think, that's a huge win, and it was based on relationship building and so forth. What's interesting is when we went out in 2016 formally, we sent RFQs to three companies: Nossaman, which Director Adams has had a relationship at the county with. But unfortunately, Nossaman also represents Cal-Am at the state level, not at the federal level. And we went out to a group called the Furman Group. And Hal Furman was a former assistant secretary for the Bureau of Reclamation for the Department of Interior, and to the Ferguson Group. And what's interesting is the Furman Group imploded about 18 months later. And while they exist, we didn't make the wrong choice, I guess, because they look very interesting. They're very water oriented, but they would not have worked out well for us. So I don't know. I think the relationship has been terrific. As I said, they're willing to discount a little bit. We are in regular, constant contact. Our needs aren't as great as they used to be when we were trying to position Pure Water Monterey. And Pure Water Monterey expansion will happen before we'll be able to qualify for any portion of the 20 million of the WRDA money, the Water Resource Development Act money. So, the only thing that might help us, we've already done, and that's we've submitted another application for an increment of money for the expansion, because the max was raised from 20 million to 30 million. So there's like another 10 million in there that maybe we can get our hands on. So, my recommendation as a GM would be to keep the relationship, because it's more than paid for itself, but keeping an eye on what our needs are, because after we finish some projects, and frankly, the way the language in the WRDA bill is drafted, it wouldn't apply to the Carmel River Free floodplain project. It would not apply to the Rancho Cañada watershed restoration project, and it would not apply to the Los Padres Dam project. So it's all water supply and wastewater related. So it will apply to some source water projects, some resiliency projects, and so forth. And the Ferguson Group has already suggested that we begin visits with the Army Corps beginning the September-October timeframe to position ourselves for some of those projects. And then I think I mentioned.
Can I stop you just for a second?
Yeah.
Just because the pot of money you were just talking about is the additional 10 million that
Yeah, so yes, that's the Title 16 monies through the Bureau of Reclamation. And so that's the application. Actually, the item that you just identified in the minutes, that was the application that just got submitted, early at the beginning of the year. And so we'll see what happens with that.
Well, this is really excellent information, filling in some gaps in what I know about. I think with the information, I think you've given us very good information and very good advice. I mean, in my mind, I completely agree that we should stick with the Ferguson Group for the federal. And did you get them to agree to reduce the monthly retainer based on your expectation that we're going to need less of their time?
Yeah, I don't think we'll get less of their time. I think it's that they recognize that our needs have been kind of satisfied, and that we've shifted from Pure Water Monterey exclusively to starting to look at watershed related things. And but I think they want to keep the business, which is really why they offered this up. Yeah.
Well, they seem to be doing a really good job for us. And, as you point out, you can only do this work if you build relationships over a pretty long period of time. I mean, that is really.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because as long as Feinstein is there and one of her principal aides is a guy named John Watts, we have recognition in that office. And then through Roger Gwynn and his colleagues, we also have recognition in Panetta's office. And that's how we got the language in the Water Resource Development Act bill through Panetta's office. Now, we failed on the earmarks for the Los Padres Dam. However, I don't think it's much of a failure because that would have been an appropriation for fiscal year 2023. And as I'm looking at the politics of this dam study, which is wrapping up now, there's no way that the parties will all agree on an alternative or a design project in the next fiscal year. So I don't think we would have been positioned to take the money down. The interests of, it's basically, we've got the State Department of Fish and Wildlife over here. We've got the National Marine Fisheries Service over there, and then a bunch of other interested stakeholders, including ourselves and Cal-Am. And I think what's going to happen with that, and it's not really the subject of today's conversation, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to end up seeing nothing happen. No one wants to spend $200 million on another dam removal project. No one wants to spend $200 million on a keep the dam in place, but manage the sediment load. And so it'll be, a couple years, and then somebody will say, well, if you're doing nothing, then you need to fix the fish passage. And then that'll be probably 2 small projects, but I just don't think we're going to get there to consensus. So, not having that earmark probably didn't hurt us a whole lot. It at least forced us to write it up, and now we can use that information to apply for some other monies. But but anyway, the point is that they've spent a lot of time getting to know the Washington staff of Panetta's as well, and so we've got a little bit of recognition there.
Good. Do the other members of the committee have comments or questions on the Ferguson group?
Thank you, Chair. Who is Monterey One using for federal?
Oh boy, Carpy and Clay, I believe is the name.
Did they ever use Ferguson?
Yeah, we did jointly, which is why I keep Mike McCullough involved in our monthly phone calls. But they went out and hired themselves a separate federal and state lobbyist just a year ago. I'm going to look them up.
Okay, but my question is, I don't know if they told you why they got rid of Ferguson, but is that out there? Were they getting anything out of them? Because
no, they piggybacked off of us. We were.
Oh, okay. They came in at. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't pay for Ferguson. We said, yeah, it's Carpy and Clay. And I don't know who at Carpy and Clay. They used to use a guy named Eric Saperstein for specific wastewater related issues. And I knew Eric, and I was never very impressed with him. But they have used him on a couple of, as I said, wastewater related. So we're a member of ACWA, the Association of California Water Agencies. They're a member of CASA, which is the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. And CASA had used Saperstein as well. So when it comes to pure wastewater kind of things, it's a little bit different world over there. But when we were doing Pure Water Monterey, we basically offered up our lobbyists to help Monterey County Water Resources Agency too. But they just, the County Water Resources Agency just isn't savvy in that regard. And they never really leveraged our relationships. But Monterey One Water, shoot, we went around, I think Dave Potter and Ralph Rubio, and then Paul Shudo and myself, we probably did 6 visits in Washington early on when we were trying to build these relationships, and it was all organized by the Ferguson group. So even though we were including Monterey One Water in those visits, it was our relationship.
Okay, I agree with the vice chair, the chair on this. Since we cut the rates a little bit, but in the future, I do believe what the vice chair bringing her in is too. We need to go out and take a shot at looking at some other ones, not this year, maybe next year, just to feel comfortable. I like to get a group that can write the grants and stuff for us.
Right, and they will do that, not under the monthly retainer, but they do a discount because we're a retainer client.
Ah.
And I think we might take them up on that. I mean, as you can see in item 4, the application to Padilla's office and Feinstein's office were computer generated.
Uh-huh.
You know, we would not have known how to do that.
Well, if we're going to spend some money on this, I like for us to get those kind of, bring it all in, that they can take care of this and we can apply. I'm looking at replenishing water for the basin. You know, I think we need to do that. We need to step out in front and do that. And that way, since I don't have nobody else on this call, and I'm glad our lawyer is here, Mr. Laredo, that way, when we go to court, if we ever get in court for Cal-Am, we can prove to them that we're out looking for money for the public instead of charging the ratepayers for this. You know, we're looking for money, and I like to put a couple of $100 million, if possible, in Seaside Basin in replenishing. And I know those grants are out there. We just need to be forceful and go get those grants. So, and it makes us look better in court going against Cal-Am, because Cal-Am is looking at the ratepayer to pay for everything. So, you know.
Really, really good. I'm sorry. Did I?
Yeah, I'm through with that.
I couldn't agree more, Alvin, on all of that, all of it. And I'm really glad to know that the Ferguson Group could do grant applications for us for a fee. But that's really good news, because they are right. They know what is needed for these specific applications. I am totally with you, Alvin, for the district to be a leader in figuring out how to replenish that Seaside Basin and find funding for it. And the money we're talking about is money that could only be accessed by public entities. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, typically. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the money, you know, in all of these bills, and I did take this to the committee probably 2 meetings ago, you know, like the Infrastructure Act and even the state stuff, you start really drilling down, and it's hard to get the money for projects like this or for replenishment of the basin. They really love the nexus between disadvantaged communities and Bay Delta. You know, in Prop 1, there was an entire section, and the biggest funding piece of that initiative that we all voted in was only for projects that would improve water quality in the Bay Delta. And it's like, well, hey, what about us? You know, we're an orphan on the Central Coast. I mean, there were pockets of money for desal, there were pockets of money for water recycling, and there were pockets of money for stormwater. So there were places for us. But when you see these giant bills, a lot of times there's only a little sliver that fits the needs of us on the Central Coast. And that's just, you know, just the way it is. But
well, go ahead, Director Malik.
Going back to Monterey One and Ferguson Group, since we are working very closely with Monterey One, is there any advantage in using or talking them into going back to the Ferguson group because of our common interest and also to save money both ways on bulk rate with the Ferguson group?
Yeah, that's a great question. So last fiscal year and the year before, I managed to get Paul to include dollars in their budget to reimburse us for anything that we had for the Ferguson group. But we never really called that in. So, we've paid for it. We got a water project built. We don't own it, but we got it built. It's working. And so we just kind of said, hey, it was to the benefit of the community. We'll foot the bill. Our constituents will pay for it. And yeah, we haven't called them on it. They're using Carpi and clay for specific things, primarily related to wastewater. They live in a world where and you've probably seen this, if you remember reading, they had a switch at the plant that discharged a bunch of raw wastewater into the ocean. They had a pump station in Pacific Grove. Those are regional water board issues, but every time something like that happens, there's a fine or a penalty. And then you end up negotiating and trying to reduce that fine or penalty. So in the wastewater world, they do a permit, and it's a national permit. It's called NPDES, National Point Emission.
It's,
Yeah.
I know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
It's about discharging. It's a discharge permit.
It's a discharge permit, right? And so they need their own kind of wastewater oriented lobbyist. I can't tell you what they do, but the Ferguson group does represent a few water agencies in California, and they're much more water oriented than wastewater. And so I don't think I could get Monterey One to go joint and use them. They've got their own needs that they've identified.
Thank you.
Now, you should know, Director Malik, that our guys at the Ferguson group know the Carpi and clay guys. And so there's been a couple of things where the Ferguson group has said, do you want us to call Carpi and clay and clear it with them or create the opportunity? So we still kind of do this thing where I'll call up Mike McCullough or Paul Shudo and I'll say, here's what we're looking at. Do you guys want your guys to talk to our guys? And so it's still coordination, but they want their own, they've got their own, and they'll pay for their own.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to know that you did, that you were successful, at least in convincing Paul to include in their budget some provision that could enable cost sharing in the appropriate circumstances. So maybe we can keep something like that alive so that if there is something that it makes sense to share the costs, we could possibly do it.
Yeah.
Do you have other questions or comments, Safwat?
Yeah, just one more from me from the close on this one. Dave, if we're going to keep them, I like to see them do a grant for us, and let's find out how much that costs. Because these big replenishing bills that are out there, I think if we put some in, we might can get a million or 100,000 or whatever they can give, because the replenishing of the Seaside Basin is really, really important to this community to keep seawater intrusion out. So if they can, I look at the replenishing stuff, the river is took care of better than it ever been taken care of. So I just.
What water would we use for replenishment? What are you thinking?
Yeah, we don't have any outside participants, do we?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I'm just checking myself. So we did do well, here's the thing. When we sat down and wrote the amended and restated water purchase agreement for the expansion, Rich Svinland was still president of CalAm. And I said, do you want this structured where you take all 2,250 acre feet of the expansion? Or do you want to, annually pick a number that's reflective of your need and we'll run the plant lower or whatever? And he said, oh no, we'll take it all. I said, well, you're going to have so much water that you won't be able to use because you don't have the demand yet. And I guess you could make the case that you're building up a drought reserve. He goes, yeah, I think we can make that case. Then for Water Supply Planning Committee, on 2 occasions, we've shown also how the expansion can be used to build up so much water in the basin that it would be in effect doing the protective water levels or the replenishment water. Because again, demand can't catch up to the full capacity of the plant the day it's built. And so over like a 25-year period, there's going to be a lot of water that there are no customers to use that can go into the basin. So then you're back to who's going to pay for it and how do you pay for it? And what we've learned is they recognize the revenue when they take it out and deliver it to customers. If they do it as a drought reserve where the water just sits in the ground, they may have to treat it like an asset, and it'll be a different effect on the rate base. And I'm not sure they've really fully thought that one through. So
I've been wondering about that.
Yeah. And so there's been one occasion where Chris Cook here locally has said, well, maybe we can sell some of our water, meaning the expansion water, to the water master. We need to come up with a funding mechanism. And that's how they could avoid the trap of building up an asset of water as a drought reserve. But I don't know where they're headed with all of that. I just want them to get through this first phase of this application and agree to sign the water purchase agreement and then worry about revenue recognition later. But that water would be available for protective water levels. They would absolutely love it if there was a big grant or the water master came up with a revenue stream where they could lay off some of that and get it out of their hands as an asset, because I think maybe there's a way to do it. And Karen, maybe you know this, I don't know, but if they hold it as an asset, which we do, so, we've got the operating reserve, we recognize it as an asset. And it's a multi-million-dollar asset that you never intend to use because you don't want to take that water out of the ground because it means you've got a problem at the plant. For their water, they're going to do in lieu recharge anyway, 700 acre feet a year of their native water right. So if we substituted for that with the excess pure water Monterey water, I mean, there's options, but the funding source isn't recognized, and I'm not sure CalAm has really addressed this revenue recognition issue.
Well, I want to see us beat them to it by tipping that hand. I know, listening to the arguments of the Seaside Basin, they trying to ramp that 700 up to probably 2,100. That way they can count this. They can count on it. So if we could, go ahead.
Yeah, they're long-term, or not that long, but their not so secret plan is to justify a desal plant with the need for extra water. That's my point. You just said it. They're doing it to justify it. I know desal probably going to be used in the future around here, but not now until we get the maximum amount out of the plant, the plant we putting together already. So that's my just closing remark. You hit it. They're trying to justify that desal, and they're trying to go justify it in the next 10 years. And I'm trying to cut that off. Even though desal is going to be used
in the future here, when I'm gone to glory, as my daddy would say it, you know, but before then, I think we can beat them. All
You
right.
and me both. You and me both, Alvin.
So if I were working for the CPUC or for Cal Advocates or Cal M, I would have to research the rate making options, the various options for how this could be treated, you know, for purposes of the company, you know, with an asset, or, you know, how they would, you know, how they could make it beneficial for the company to hold it. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, and we're going to need to look into it. It didn't matter for the 3,500 under the base project because their needs were always in excess of that. But now we're hitting the point where all the sources available to Cal-Am are going to be in excess of their needs. And, you know, you're absolutely right that at some point, you know, public advocate's going to look at it too and say, is this best for the ratepayers? And you know, to pay for all of it every year? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we'll keep them around, but get them prepared.
Yeah, I just need to get them to sign the agreement and then we can worry about it after that. But yeah.
Yeah, I never completely understood why they were so certain they wanted to buy all of it. But, you know, it's likely to become a very valuable asset.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, frankly, putting some water in the ground makes complete sense because you put a 5-year supply in to cover for aquifer storage and recoveries difficulties, you know, just for drought resiliency.
Drought, yeah, drought resilience.
Yeah.
They really, I mean, it seems very prudent to do that. Yeah. And
so should we move on to item 3?
Yes, unless one of the other directors.
I'm ready to move on.
Okay.
Me
All right.
too, yes.
Okay.
We have no members of the public.
I'll make a motion.
We don't need a motion because we're only for discussion.
We don't need to approve the,
Well, I'll bring it back in July to the administrative committee. So today we were just looking for direction, whether we want to change horses now or stick with what we've got or cancel it completely. So it sounds like we're all in agreement to keep the relationship, at least for this fiscal year.
And the contracts have always been renewed on an annual basis?
Correct.
So that always, you know, we can always review. We can review every year if we want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't need a motion. Okay, so let's go on to the state lobbyists.
Yep. And I think what's interesting here is we have an incoming Speaker of the Assembly, Robert Rivas. And yeah, well, John Arriaga and Robert Rivas are super close. And John and Senator Laird both sat on a UC Santa Cruz board together. And so they're pretty good friends.
Uh-huh.
So if we're going to keep a Sacramento lobbyist, now's the time to keep JEA because of those relationships. And I can tell you there's stuff that we do that, you know, I don't do a good enough job of reporting everything, but, and Dave Laredo knows this, we developed language for special legislation. And then we got it through Mark Stone's office, even though Mark was unwilling to become the author, his staff submitted it to the Legislative Counsel's office. And then we worked with Legislative Counsel through JEA and Associates with Lori Johnson, who Lori's been in Sacramento for years, and she knows how all of these things work. And so we developed satisfactory language that the Legislative Counsel's office approved. Lori and John were instrumental in that. But then ultimately, neither Laird nor Stone wanted to be the author because they had their own legislative agenda. But now it's sitting in front. Dave, I think I copied you as well, right? Is
Yes.
the revised language and an email to John Laird is sitting with Lori and John right now. So they do, they provide services for us beyond just bill tracking and that kind of thing. We did get legislation passed that Bill Monning sponsored, and John presented at a variety of committees. We had to go up and do testimony. We went to hearings for Bill Monning's water tax bill that we secretly opposed, but because he was our legislator, we took a neutral stance out of a courtesy. So they've been very good for us, but we don't need legislation passed every year. And so there's been some years where they had to do work, and then there's some years where they're not. Right now, though, what we're attempting to do is to take a 2-year bill that John Laird introduced and is sitting over on the assembly side, and then try to either gut and amend it or just amend it with the language that can help us get past the LAFCO issue on Measure J. So, it's another case where the relationship's working and they're doing the right things and they give us good advice. So I wouldn't recommend changing. I know that Mary had expressed some concerns, and because they had worked for the county for a number of years, and then the county decided to change. But the reason for that was that John Arriaga was also very close to Ana Caballero. And when Luis lost to Ana for assembly and then became a supervisor, the first chance Luis got, he got rid of John Arriaga because of his close relationship to Ana Caballero. So it was a little bit of
That was the reason.
it was payback. Not because JEA was not doing a good job on behalf of the county. So, but I think that, Mary Adams sees who they have now, Nosman, I believe is their state lobbyist, is doing a good job. And I know that Nick Chulos, who's deputy county administrative officer and handles some of the legislative work, introduced me to a federal guy for Nosman, and that's why they got an RFQ from us back when we hired the Ferguson group, because he was a pretty bright and connected guy in Washington. So, I think they do a good job. So the county's got who they need, but I can't say that JEA's been doing a bad job or an ineffective job. We've got them attending regular Aqua legislative meetings in Sacramento, which has helped us maintain a presence that's kind of bigger than the size of our district. We're a sleepy, small district on the Central Coast, but we've had the advantage of Bill Monning having a leadership position in the Senate. Robert Rivas, gosh, we went up there during Pure Water Monterey, and the state was converting their payment system to a computerized, centralized system. The Pure Water Monterey project was getting months and months behind in arrears on its reimbursement from the state revolving fund. And, Monterey One Water was getting desperate. We were participating, and, John set up a meeting with one of the state water board members, and in the afternoon attended a meeting with Robert Rivas's staff and the assembly member. And they went and worked on our behalf and got a physical pay system just to cover kind of the gap period. And, I'll never forget that, because Rivas is not our assembly member. He's an assembly member whose district covers part of the Pure Water Monterey project, which is why we introduced him to the project and brought him over and so forth. But that's the connection there. But regionally, he knows us. He knows me, or at least he's really good at reading the name tag. He recognizes me. And so I just think things are going pretty well right now. It's just we don't always have the need for Sacramento help, just like we don't always have the need for federal help. And all of these guys work on retainer, so you're paying for something and you're not always getting, a commensurate amount of work if you don't have the needs. So
You think they spend more time on the Aqua work than on the Sacramento legislative side?
they'll do both.
No, I
So
mean,
you know,
yeah,
we-
I know they do both, but do they spend more time? Does the Aqua, what they're doing in Aqua require more of their time, do you think, or?
I don't think so. I think they want to do it and they know that, they do it on our behalf, but if it leads to something else, they're doing it as business development as well. But their legislative affairs coordinator, a woman named Cindy Tuck, it helps me in my relationship. So whenever I see her, or she'll occasionally call and say, what's the Central Coast's opinion on this bill, or how does this impact the Central Coast, as just kind of a sounding board for the region, not just the district. And I think part of that derives from the fact that, they see John or Lori or both with frequency, so they continue to think about us. But, we've had them stand up in front of committees and say, Monterey Peninsula Water Management District supports this bill or opposes unless amended. It's just a 30-second stand up, but those things add up. And so we've done that on behalf of positions that Aqua has taken that we support, or that we at least have an interest in. But we, legislatively, we haven't had any legislation that we need other than this, proposed special legislation for our LAFCO issue. And, we couldn't get anybody to author it, but they are going to work with us on trying to convince Laird's people to slip it in now. And what happens in all these cases is they have a limited number of bills they can introduce. And if their priorities are climate change or something else, it falls off. But then their bills start to get slow bleeding deaths in committees. And so once their plate becomes a little more clear, then they can, perhaps pick up our needs and add to it. So that's what Lori is working on right now. She's identified a couple of bills that might work, but they do both,
Okay.
regulatory and legislative.
Uh-huh. Is there any aspect of what they do that you feel they could do better? If you were to sit down
Yeah.
and discuss performance with them, in an honest way, is there anything they could do better?
Not really. I think it falls to us. And this is where I have some difficulties. If we don't have the need, every year comes around, I'll say to Suresh, should we just drop these contracts? And he'll say, hey, it's small dollars for keeping the access. And so that's what it is. We don't have a big enough need. There's some water districts, like Eastern Municipal Water District has 2 internal people who deal with legislative work, and both state and federal lobbyists. And our needs ebb and flow. And so half the time I think we're paying these guys to do very little. And it's not because they're not competent. It's just we don't have enough to give them.
Well, David, and that with me is, I look at the state the same way I look at federal. We need money for water.
Yep.
We need that money for water. And if they can't get that, can they do the same thing that the Fed can do? If they can write the grants and stuff, I read in here $2 billion and give me a couple of $100 million, I'll probably be happy. But that's the kind of stuff I think they need to start working on and have their prices increase.
Yeah.
I don't mind paying for the increase if they're doing the work, but if they're not doing the work, I believe in what you just said, shut them down. Shut them down.
Interestingly, they're a little bit under market in what we pay them because they kind of failed to read the contract for multiple years. And so we were paying them $2,500 a month for, 5 or 6 or 7 years. And typical going rate for state lobbyists is in the, the 4,000 to 5,000 a month retainer, depending on your needs. It could be more if you're, if you're Metwater, you have your own staff that just sits up in Sacramento. But so it wasn't until last year that we bumped their monthly retainer.
Yeah, I remember that. So
yeah.
I like to see us bump it some more, but they got to do some more work. And let's get them on these grants, $2 billion that in with the state, and we can't get a million of it. They need to show me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. These two agencies, they need to do a little bit more harder work, and you need to tell them, and we'll pay them if we can get the money for the water. That's what we're looking for. So,
yeah, and they do a good job of identifying funding opportunities and telling us where they are, so that the good thing about both our federal and state lobbyists is that they are looking out for us and they give us information that we otherwise wouldn't have stumbled on ourselves, which is good. I'll give you one example of where I thought JEA was really effective. And so back when John Laird was Resources Secretary, John Arriaga set up a meeting with Laird, and we talked about global issues and the big stuff and Pure Water Monterey, but we also had a little tiny issue. And the little tiny issue was, in order to apply for fish grants through the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which was under John Laird as secretary, there was a computerized application process. And for the Carmel River, the pull down tab didn't have the right category for what we needed. And so we had this meeting and was like, well, is there anything else? I said, well, John, this really is kind of beneath your level, but maybe we could talk to your aide about this little problem we have. The pull down menu doesn't work for the Carmel River work that we're trying to do to apply for. And we've talked to your staff, to Fish and Wildlife staff, for about 8 months trying to get it fixed. And, here we are in another funding cycle coming up in a couple months. In 2 days, the pull down menu got fixed. So it was pretty, and it was just the type of thing that, because John Arriaga and John Laird sat on this alumni board together at Santa Cruz, it was a real collegial meeting. And it was the type of thing that we appropriately said, this is beneath you, let's talk to your aide. But he did it anyway. I mean, John just said, go make this happen. And, that's just the type of thing that, relationships are about. Now, I can tell you with Wade Crowfoot as the new Resources Secretary, he's so very hands-off that we never could have gotten there on that same issue had he been the Resources Secretary at the time. But we have met with Wade, so, and John set that up, our John. So they'll do whatever we ask them to do, and they do things that we don't ask them to do, but we need to ask them to do more.
Well, that's the point. They need to show, need to show Director Edwards they're going to do more, and we're going to get a little bit more. And I think the board will pay them. Mr. Laredo, who was the lobbyist that we used when me, you, and Darby and my friend from Pacific Grove had to go to the state to try to save the district? Your mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't recall that name.
Oh, okay, but that's when a lobbyist worked best for me, because we went to the meeting, we made our
we used them in the hallway.
That's right, it was in the hallway. And I remember when we got back to Monterey, the answer was in that we were saved. So you know, I like to see them do a little bit more work than just tell me what bill's out there. Go to the bill and try to give me a couple of $1 million out of it. Especially
was that the Russ McPherson committee issue that they were?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Trying to shut down the district?
Huh?
They were trying to shut down the district?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
when was
yeah.
that? When was that?
Oh man, that was back in the the
80?
middle of the 2000s. I think
Yeah,
it
was like 2002 or 3 somewhere.
Yeah, it was early.
Yeah.
It was early. So
Hmm.
we used the lobbyists for that, and that's the only time they turned out good for me.
Yeah, strange bedfellows. I had David Dilworth in the car going up with me.
That's him. That's him. You
Oh
sure?
my goodness.
That's right. Okay.
That's your Pacific
So,
Grove.
To follow up on Alvin's point, is JEA capable of providing these services that Alvin would like to see them provide?
Yeah, and in fact, we've done similar things where we've been up for committee, and you know we're working from hearing room to hearing room, and you know, meetings with Mark Stone and Bill Monning, and now with Laird and Rivas and so forth. They have access, and they have.
Can they also write grant proposals?
I don't think so. We've never tried to use them for that. We've used Corollo engineers, and then there's a woman who has done some grant writing for us, both by herself and then also with Corollo engineers. And then recently, I think we used Dudek, which is an environmental firm, to write a grant proposal. But
well, I like to see them put something to work. If we got to pay the extra for it, if they got in these these water bills that coming out for replenishing and stuff, they need to pick, or we need to pick one and put them on it, and talk to the board about the difference in the pay and say it's out there. At least we're doing it, and let the public know we're doing this. So you know, when you talk to them.
So you want them to lobby on our behalf for appropriating replenishment?
Yes, any project that got water in it, that money, and I think the only thing we got right now that we can try to get for the public is Seaside Basin water, money for it. And I know we want to stay away from that, but if I can show that we care about the Seaside Basin, because we got to manage it. And then we care about the Seaside Basin because we make money off of it by filling it with water and trying to sell it. So, you know, it's just two differences. But I like to see this group do something like that. $2 billion every year they putting out money for water, and now is the right time to do it because we're in a drought and we got the storage capacity. So same thing with the feds and the state, but we can keep them, and told them we gave them a pay raise last year.
So what do you think of that, Dave Stolt?
Yeah, you know, we can't do it yet because we don't have the water, but we will in 30 months.
Okay.
Right, and they can get the grant they start now, we probably can't have the money by then. If it's in the works, so.
Yep.
This is this idea is something that Cal-Am should be on our side.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
money to buy that extra water from Cal-Am. I mean,
And that's the point of showing them we are going to do what we need to do, especially in the Seaside Basin. That's my point with them. That's when I told you we're trying to pick a fight with them because they're going to go to the judge, the adjudication judge, and say, well, we think the Seaside Basin needs 2,100 acre feet now to replenish it. And we're going to charge the ratepayer, and we want to build this desal plant out here, and really don't have to, not now. So that's my argument when they go to adjudication judge. I don't think we ought to roll over on that one because we're the managers.
yeah, okay. So anything more on, well, I mean, you have given us a lot of reasons to continue with them. I guess there's some more to think about asking them to do some of the things that Alvin has been talking about, which makes sense to me. I mean, those sound, those ideas are good from my point of view. So exactly how we proceed on that, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, we need to, so the governor and the Senate both have budget documents out there with a chunk of money for infrastructure and for water. So we'll have them reviewed as to, but we don't know which one's going to get adopted. I mean, that's a separate issue, but we'll try to identify pockets of money. One of the problems we have to keep in mind is the year of appropriation has to match up with the year we're ready to do it. So it might be premature, but we need to get on that. And actually just all the different funding sources. Lori Johnson has always been really good about identifying all the pockets of money and the programs, and pretty much on an annual basis. And then on an ad hoc basis, when something comes up, she lets us know. So, but I don't think we've really thought about trying to get public monies to subsidize replenishment water, which, the water master itself does not have a funding source. And so
this makes total sense. I mean, obviously this budget year is coming to a close, but it's too bad because there's both a drought and a budget surplus, but that may happen next year too. So we can start, taking the first steps with that goal of getting public money for it.
That's where I want to go. We need to start. We need to go on out in front on this and get started and get them prepared that, hey, the board is looking for something here. And so Dave, you could tell them, hey, I love to keep you, but they want to test you now and see, can you do it? So,
well, this might be something to do as legislation to introduce in the next legislative cycle. We haven't introduced anything, but for several years, but this could be one. I think we're the only adjudicated groundwater basin in Northern California. All the rest of them are in Southern California. And so, if you tell the story correctly, go pass a bill and get some money that way, rather than try to shoehorn it into an existing program.
Now that's in it. We could talk to JEA about this idea, and if we can get a bill in, even if it's a 2-year bill, for the next cycle, it should track pretty well time-wise with the construction of the expansion, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, let's talk to them about it. Maybe when we meet with them again, or how do you think is it? You want to talk to them on your own first, Steve? What's the best way to?
Oh yeah, well, I'm going to talk to him, tomorrow. Well, actually, I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so I'll talk to them on Monday. Because they also want to know if we're still going to
Monday
recommend them to
vacation?
be hired.
Okay,
What's
so
that?
you'll talk to them about it
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And float the idea. Yeah.
yeah, and please tell them the board is looking for you to step up now. You doing it, you doing it, let me keep you, but you need to tell them, the board is looking for you to step up now, really step up. And,
Yep.
and we'll pay for it, we have to pay for it, the board approve it, but we'll run across the board and everybody, you know, let them say their word, but I think if we're gonna keep these kind of people around, they need to show us something.
Yep.
So.
Mm.
All right.
Does anybody have anything to add on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we, rather than wait for these people to come up with something, can we identify pressing projects that we want them to focus on?
Yes, and we're doing the same with the Ferguson group. So yes, we'll do that. I think this newer concept of replenishment water or protective water levels is something that we haven't really contemplated or talked about. So, that's one we'll get them started on, but it may be that the best path is, as I said, introducing legislation rather than trying to fit it into an existing program.
Right.
Well, and it may make sense to keep both options open or for a while anyway, until
Yeah.
things become clearer.
We just take the proactive approach
Yeah.
rather than sit back and wait for something to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you never know if one of those bills have, okay, we got a couple of $1 million left, give it to the peninsula or whatever. But we, just need to check. We just need to work forward to it.
Yep. Will do.
Um,
Okay, so we'll bring this one back to administrative committee as well.
Okay.
And
good. And so the contracts are up for renewal, you say in when?
well, normally would have been June, but you wanted to have this conversation. Mary wanted us to have this conversation.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, so, all right, we'll follow up on renewing, I guess it'll come to the board in July then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Items to place on a future committee agenda will obviously follow up on what we've discussed today. Anything else?
Well, we touched on item 4 in discussing the other programs, but I did want to let you know, we talked about the Hertzberg bill, this 47 gallons per capita per day, and then down to 42 in 2030. So yesterday we went into the state's database and actually did the calculation on, and again, the Hertzberg numbers were interior residential water use. So we first calculated the residential water use in total.
Yeah.
And it turns out that since June of 2016, the data that Cal-Am has been using is the same as the district's jurisdiction, and it's 59 per capita per day, 59 gallons per capita per day. And then we took only the December, January, February months for those 6 years. So that's 18 data points. And it turns out, and so we use that as a proxy for interior water use, because those would be the non-irrigation months.
Mhm.
Turns out we're at 52. Going from 52 to 42 is going to be extraordinarily difficult.
Wow.
So we have, we've given Aqua the green light to include the district on their list of the coalition to oppose this Hertzberg bill. So I just wanted you to know that.
Just a quick one from me on page 19, of your packet, the exhibit 4A,
Yep.
what are they talking about there?
So-
Is this something that they putting in for, or this something I would like them to work on? This
No,
is it right here.
Yeah, this is something that they came up with, the Ferguson group came up with, went to Panetta's office and said, hey, would you be amenable to adding some language to this WRDA bill, the Water Resource Development Act? The WRDA bills get passed about every 2 to 4 years. And so this is a very veiled and very vague statement that made it through the House in their version of the bill. It's not in the Senate's version of the bill, but the consensus feeling of the Ferguson group is it's very likely to make its way through the combined bill, but it may not see the light of day until after the midterm elections. So, this could be at the end of this calendar year. That doesn't automatically make the 20 million available. Then what you have to do is prioritize some projects that fit the definitions and purposes of the Infrastructure Act, which is managed through the Corps of Engineers. And then you come up with a project, and through the earmark process, they look back and they say, oh, there's 20 million for the Monterey Peninsula. You're coming at us with a project for 2.5, 3, maybe $5 million, and it fits the bill. And it matches the nexus between these two Corps of Engineer programs. Fine, let's do it. Here's your 75% funding, federal funding. The local share, the non-federal share is typically things like land or rights of way, or things that the feds won't do. If the cost of your rights of way and land actually exceeded 50% of the total project, then they will kick in money. But the whole idea here was to set it up so that by 2024, so this would be a 2024 appropriation, if we have some projects that we can prioritize, then we can slip them in and they're already kind of pre-appropriated. So in talking to Monterey One Water today, that we think that the best story, of course, is still Pure Water Monterey, multi-benefit, multi-region. So to the extent we can bolster source waters, a drought reserve to improve drought resilience, it could be something as simple as getting money to buy water to put into the ground to hold as a drought reserve. So not necessarily full replenishment, but excuse me. So anyway, this is the starting point to create kind of a placeholder for an appropriation in 2024.
Well, this is something that I like them to work on, and you can, put this to work. This is a project that, and it got 2 years, 2024, to see if they can get it or whatever. But it's something they're working on for us that I would like to see us do. 20 million, I don't care if it's 2 or 3 million out of the 20.
Exactly.
It tells me something. So,
but this is where your federal lobbyist can earn his keep.
Thank you. That's right. They shouldn't have. You did. They shouldn't have put this in. You shouldn't have put this in there, because now that's the project.
Well, what's funny
it
is
gives them a couple of years to say, okay, let me see how they come out on this.
Well, what's funny is, right now, so prior to the Democrats taking back over the House, there were no earmarks whatsoever. Right. And you had to just qualify and go through an application process and so forth. That's changed, but it could change again. And so if this is in there and gets through, then it's set. And so then you can still, when is an earmark not an earmark? When you've already got legislation like this that says the money's there and available for you, so you're just pulling it down with a qualifying project. And that's why sometime around September, October, we will start walking the halls of the Corps of Engineers, both through the regional office in San Francisco, as well as go back to DC. And so my conversation this morning with Monterey One Water is, let's prioritize some projects. There's some winter work that could be done on the reclamation project, the Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project, that would benefit Pure Water Monterey with winter operations, and it's a couple $1 million. There's a Pond 3 project in the Salinas Ponds that would improve source waters for Pure Water Monterey. There's the idea of a drought reserve. So we're going to sit down and try to collectively with Monterey One Water see what we can do to augment the success of Pure Water Monterey with some of this money.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't mind helping them out, but in other cases, we the buyers of the water, or we, let's get some money so we can keep putting water in the ground.
Yeah, but
That's my point.
these other possible projects too, they're so good, and if any of them, I think they're worth pursuing also, and if any of them pan out, we need to publicize them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep. Although the news cycle is so short, when we got the Title 16 money for Pure Water Monterey, and we got a stormwater grant, we got a bunch of grant money, and no one remembers. I mean, it's just, you tell them once and you celebrate, and you tell them a second time, you celebrate, but then a year goes by and they forget.
Yep. And someone pointed out to me recently that we missed an opportunity in January. Cal-Am was able to come into compliance with the CDO thanks to Pure Water Monterey. And we could have reminded everybody of that. We just, we weren't focused on public outreach and telling people about the good things we accomplished. So anyway, that would be worth, if any of those projects you just mentioned to do more with Pure Water Monterey work out, we should definitely publicize them.
Yeah, understood.
The fish ladder money that we didn't get, will we try again on that, you think?
Yeah, we will. And we also, I think I mentioned somewhere in here, we did a proposal October a year ago for fish barrier removal. And that one was managed through the state of California Fish Passage Forum. And it turns out one of the grant reviewers knew enough about the district to say, oh, they have money, so let's not award them a grant. The release that just came out 2 days ago is not managed through that same forum. It's going to be managed directly through the National Marine Fisheries Service. So we may take some of this information you see about fish passage and reapply to this new program that just did their release 2 days ago. But the application will be due in August. So yeah, we'll keep at it. But as I said earlier in this meeting, that the stakeholders on the Los Padres Dam probably can't get their act together for a couple of years. The size of the funding that's needed to really address Los Padres Dam is something like twice as much as what it took to do San Clemente. And no one's happy about that, especially when a big chunk of it became a regulatory asset for which a shareholder rate of return is paid, and the ratepayers end up footing the bill for that. So stay tuned. But yeah, we've changed our focus a little bit to also find money for the watershed, be it Los Padres Dam or be it these flood control and habitat projects.
Okay. And let's try and get into the habit of any of these things that are successful
Yeah, to
to
let people know.
to yell from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on the first two items in four? That is
Nope.
the $20 million and okay, and then the fish ladder issue. So SB 1469 is probably going to pass, right? Is that your assessment?
Well, it's, oh, 1469.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
RAM,
Bradford.
the
Yeah,
water
it's,
utilities, the
yeah,
investigation
I
utilities.
think it is going to pass. What's interesting is you remember where one of the commissioners really drove home that the water revenue adjustment mechanism needed to be taken away from the utilities, that a Monterey style adjustment mechanism could be done. But what this appears to be doing is setting the stage for going back to the old form of cost recovery. And this one was initiated, I think Bradford is in a district that Cal Water Service is in, but then Cal Am joined with them, and I think Liberty Utilities has joined with them. I think, you know, the 3 or 4 biggest Class A water utilities are now behind this bill. But you read it, and it's like, it's non-specific, except to say that the utilities should be entitled to recover their losses due to conservation. But it doesn't point to a specific section of the water code or anything. So I don't know how it's going to be effective, other than it'll be something they can put into testimony as they're applying to get full cost recovery. But yeah, it's very likely to pass.
Well, I haven't read it yet. I should read it. But vague is probably not good.
Right.
So maybe there are people who can work to amend it so it's less dangerous, less harmful. And if so, maybe we can support that.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to public advocates after we've read. Maybe our consultants can talk to public advocates. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up and find out where it's at, because I don't know where it's at. It's the type of thing that Lori has made a pet project of sending me amendments to it every once in a while. And
so maybe she can just tell us where it's at. I mean, I don't want to put all the work on you. That's what we hired them for, right? To tell us where it. Well, I'll read it, and I'll go online and see who's supporting it and who's opposing it and all of that. But if she could let us know where it's at, and if there are people working on amendments that we might support, to let us know that.
Yep, will do.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions or comments on these update items?
No more from me.
Okay. Anything more on agenda items for the future meetings? Besides follow up on the replenishment, and other projects that we discussed today. All right, then let's adjourn.
All right, have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
The meeting.
Bye.
Bye.